Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. How can you build something which has the potential to become a billion-dollar business? In today's discussion, I speak with Evan Sohn, who is the CEO of Recruiter.com. Recruiter.com is a hiring platform that's disrupting the recruiting and staffing industry. He came across a website that had a great audience, but didn't have the platform and the products and services that could really maximize it. And he's been really working at this for the last couple of years to create something rather special. Evan's a great interviewee. He's a New Yorker. He speaks fast. He thinks fast. We have a great conversation and we cover huge ground. We talk about the mistake most leaders make as they create a gap between vision on one hand and execution on the other, and it's hard for people to understand how to get from A to Z or A to Z. We talk about how we distinguish temptation from opportunity and the importance of doing that, the importance of creating KPIs that everybody understands, how they contribute to the corporate mission. And we also look at Evan as a leader. He's a passionate, high-energy person. But what's the dark side of that, and how does that get in his way at times? This is a really interesting conversation. Evan has a lot of concepts and ideas that he throws into this conversation, so it's a really rich one. Strap in for what's a fascinating conversation with Evan Sohn of Recruiter.com. Hi, Evan, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Richard, for having me. Really appreciate it.
I'm really excited to have you on today. You are the chief executive of Recruiter.com, which seems to be incredibly fast-growing and interesting business disrupting the recruitment market. So we're going to get into that a little bit. But I also want to scratch the surface and find out about your formula for creating impact. I know you founded your own business. You've had a string of roles in different areas, and now you're leading up this very exciting opportunity. So why don't we kind of just take a step back and give us a quick summary of what's your journey been, and how did you come into this role as CEO of Recruiter.com?
Sure. A little long-winded story, so brace yourself. So I'm 54 years old. I started my first company. I was a programmer through college, and I started my first company I was in NYU Business School in mobile computing. So 1989 mobile looks very different than mobile today. And really professionalized the mobile application side of things. So we really worked with some really just fantastic companies, American Express, Merck, Bristol Myers Squibb, Roche, Abbott, TD Ameritrade. Grew that company over a decade and got acquired by Dun & Bradstreet in 1998. Left there, was pulled out by a venture capital firm to come work in the security space, was there for a little bit. That eventually morphed into, got acquired by Message Labs, which was an antivirus, anti-spam provider. Stayed there for a little bit. That company got acquired by Symantec. Then I went back into mobile, got acquired by Verifone in the payment space, spent about a decade in the payment space, left Verifone after a bunch of years there and joined a Silicon Valley company called Point. Point recently, about a year ago, got acquired by GoDaddy. So other than my first company in 89, I've really played more of a sales marketing, sales strategy, sales role in these other companies. So love the sales process, love the sales aspect of things. And about 3 years ago, I was talking to an investor, a friend of mine. Hey, I want to get involved in a public company, in a small public company. I want to use my sort of background and experience to really move that peanut forward. He introduced me to a company that's now called Recruiter.com. Recruiter.com was a media company. You think of a destination site, media company, it makes money selling sponsorships and advertising, right? That's kind of how you look at a media company. But a media company had, the largest LinkedIn groups and recruiters, 850,000 globally, 3.5 million social media touch points, almost 50,000 Twitter followers, really just 42,000 recruiters on our platform alone, all these other things. And my thesis was, let's now actually add software and turn these recruiters as an expert network for talent acquisition.
Okay, so you had the eyeballs, so you had the audience.
I had the eyeballs, and I'm like, let's turn this into an expert network. I love expert networks, and let's turn an expert network for talent acquisition. And so, we looked at the gig economy. And also, I've been involved in new industries, and I've been involved in reinventing existing industries. Reinventing existing industries is actually much, much easier. Zoom is one of our clients. We didn't convince Zoom to spend money on talent acquisition. We're just convincing them to spend money with us. I looked at this industry from a financial perspective, and, completely ripe for reinvention, right? It's a $76 billion, and that was from 2017. It's probably more now. Huge industry made up of thousands and thousands of small and independent recruiters on one side. You have all of the digital talent, candidate identification led by guys like ZipRecruiter, Indeed, and LinkedIn. But that segment alone is about a $26 billion space. And they're probably doing, let's say, $3-something billion. So there are lots and lots of parties in this space. And really just wanted to, capture our segment of that market.
So you saw an opportunity in that, right? To say there was a business that was underexploited because it had this massive reach, but it hadn't got the service and the differentiation.
I think the other thing, Richard, is that, having been on the investor side a few times, every time you raise money, you would say to the investors, hey, we're going to spend about 30% of that money on brand identity. Right? Brand identity and lead generation. Well, we're ReadyRecruiter.com. Like, we have that brand. We get $4.5 million a month in organic traffic. So we get a ridiculous amount of organic traffic. We have this presence already. So the opportunity to not have to allocate dollars to actually brand building, it's actually, a real serious asset for the company. There are not many domain brand names out there. You think of booking.com and hotels.com and realtor.com. So there's recruiter.com. And I think there's really just this great opportunity. And then to make the long story slightly longer, in May of 20, so I first came on as chairman of the board, executive chairman of the board, raised a little bit of money, put things together. And then really in May of 2020, I sat down with the board of directors. And I said, if you think about the shutdown stocks of Peloton and Netflix and DoorDash, what's going to be a reopening stock? And I said, look, when this whole pandemic is over, the job market's going to be in absolute disarray. And we're going to be there as Recruiter.com to really reap the benefits, if you will, of helping companies hire better, stronger, faster. I had no idea it would be in this disarray. And, I said, I'll put my money where my mouth is. And I quit my day job and I became CEO. The CEO moved over to become COO. We raised some more money, hired an investment banker, and then we got on NASDAQ this past July. So we are roughly, I think, 8 months in on NASDAQ now, and growing really nicely.
Yeah, fantastic. And so if you look back at that career, it's really interesting, right? I mean, you were an entrepreneur, you went into corporate, you had all sorts of transactions along the way. You identified Recruiter.com, you got involved, you raised the money, and then you became CEO. So it's a fantastic trajectory. What's your secret sauce, right? So if you identify one to three factors that have driven your impact, what would they be?
So my secret sauce, good question, is my superpower, right? So let's not say super, let's use the word super, but is really getting excellent clarity on what's next, right? So most people tend to focus on things that are 10 steps away. Now that's great and all, but that's not what's in front of your face. And it's a little salesy oriented, right? Go get the signature on the paper. Nothing else matters than getting the signature on the paper. Don't talk Doesn't matter about what's going to happen next and how we're going to delete. None of that matters, right? And I really learned that from some very exciting salespeople that I've worked with. But business is the same. Get very good clarity on the priorities and really what's next in that priority. What has to happen to get there. I early in my career.
Can I interrupt for a second? I want to interrupt just because I want to make clear, because
I'm a New Yorker, Richard. You can interrupt me anytime you want.
Oh, there we go. I wouldn't have guessed that you're a New Yorker. No, just kidding. It comes out.
Fast talking New Yorker.
What I was gonna, well, it's okay. I can out fast talk most people, so we'll see. I always say that the brain is a broadband device and the mouth is a narrowband device, right? It's really hard to get to get your mouth to keep up with your brain sometimes. Now, I was going to say, when you talked about what's next, I thought you were talking around the seeing around corners kind of thing, like looking beyond the horizon. But what I'm hearing is actually like, what's the very next thing that we need to do to move the ball forward?
That's right. So I'm actually really good at where the hockey puck is going. That's the US expression, right? Yes. It's not where the hockey puck is, where it's going. That's an old Wayne Gretzky line. But I think that, I've worked with CEOs that would, years ago, they would draw two circles in a line and go, see, I solved the problem, right? You're at A, you're at stage A. Everyone knows what stage Z looks like. It's global domination, and it's $1 billion valuation, right? So that's easy, right? Here's where we are at A, there's the Z. The real challenge is really, what does B look like? And how do you get to B? And then how do you get to C? Then how do you get to D? And by the way, the mistakes that we make along the way, in my mistakes, are that we jump too quickly. There was a stage B. I went from A to C. I really need to go to B. And just getting really good clarity on what's next and what's next and what's next. And by the way, translate that really from a sales perspective, right? There's a process in sales that's just incredibly pure. You made your presentation, the customer is interested. So what's next? Well, next is, let's go get a formal contract in place. What's next? Let's review the contract. What's next? We're going to get their red line back. Now, you're not going to say, can I get the signature until you get a red line, because everyone's going to red line something. So, okay, we got your red lines. Great. Now let's schedule a call. So there's a sales process, a repeatable process. Yeah. But all the businesses like that, what's next, and getting really good clarity on what's next.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Like, what's your thought process if you go into a new business or a new business unit, or you're given a new challenge? How do you break that down? I'm just curious to kind of get inside that.
Yeah. So I do what's called I do what I call an asset test, right? Your typical asset test was, assets on one side, liabilities on the other. And I would generally look at companies. I've been in a number of in situations, high growth, not just high growth, but like startup companies trying to conquer the world. And you basically write, here's what we are today, and here's what we want to be. And you look at the gap there, and then you have to, do the real serious look in the mirror. Here's what we're selling, and here's what we could deliver. Let's make sure we could deliver what we're selling, and really alignment there along the way, and move that process along the way. So that's really, you just got to get really good clarity on what you are today, and what you're going to be in the near future. Talking about, we talk about, okay, let's go charge recruiters, some sort of membership fee to be on the platform. Well, that makes a lot of sense when you have an incredibly good value proposition that they must have, like an Amazon Prime functionality, or software that is just so easy to use, or something that really makes sense there. So if you're not there today, stop talking about it, right? We'll get there, we'll get there when we're ready. Right? Uber doesn't charge the drivers to be on their platform, right? They make money for their drivers to be on the platform. Now, does one day Uber say, hey, look, we charge an extra $1 a month in order to do X, Y, and Z? Maybe, but that's not their problem today. So I think you have to get really good and honest with what you are. And I think when I've run into CEOs, this is a real CEO show, really knowing what you are. Not just the aspirational side of here's where we want to be, but really being identified that, CEOs, we're all cheerleaders, right? We're all consummate cheerleaders. We're pumping everybody up. We're telling everyone how amazing we are, but at the same time, we've got to look and go, look, here's what our challenges are. And here are the areas that we need to improve.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people, either they jump into the vision and then they get frustrated that people don't know how to go from A to B, or those people are so stuck in the, not to say CEOs, but people can be stuck in the present without a sense of where we're going. And I think you're right, that ability to bridge the gap, build those bridges, I think is really what you're saying, and have those phased approach of what's the capability? It sounds like what's the capability that you need to build, right?
Yeah,
to move things on.
A little more. I had this phenomenal mentor in the 90s, early 2000s, that really focused on KPIs. What are the things that you're going to measure the most, right? What are your biggest KPIs? Get really good clarity on what those are. And then what are you doing to move those KPIs? And then every month, how are you doing? And what's the plan to adjust those KPIs? What's the, if it's how many new customers are you adding a month? Great. We want to be adding 6 new customers a month. How are we doing? What's the plan to do that, et cetera?
Yeah.
And when I look at a management team, for me, it's, the more people that have one priority, the better, right? If you have one thing that you're doing and one thing only, that's just incredible clarity, right? You're not going to get into this, I call them the distractions, right? You want to minimize the distractions, because you wake up a year later and you say to your subordinate, hey, what have you gotten done? And they go, well, look at all the distractions I had. I had a whole year's worth of distractions, right? And but that's not what you're being measured on.
Yeah, sorry, just to come in on that. I mean, one of the biggest one of the biggest things that I see with CEOs, or leaders of all levels, actually, is they can create chaos in their organizations because they get an idea, they throw it into the organization, and it actually creates chaos and no sense of momentum, because people don't know where to focus and they feel everything is now a priority coming down from above. And it really distracts people. I like to say there's a time for strategy and a time for execution, so you need a time where you do wrestle with all those priorities, but then you also need a moment when you say, okay, lock and load for at least.
I agree. An expression I learned years ago from a CEO that I worked with, one of the companies that acquired us. The greatest challenge for, let's call it, a high growth company is to know the difference between a temptation and an opportunity. Right? A temptation will kill you, an opportunity will thrill you. And that's the challenge. Is this an opportunity or is it a temptation? And the challenge as a CEO is that you, as you just said, Richard, you have so much control. You could wake up, come into the office or a virtual office and say, hey, look, folks, we're opening up a pizza store today. Everyone drop what you're doing. We're opening up a pizza store. Or, hey, we must get this article out. This is a new feature we must have. Yeah. And all of a sudden, everyone is, as you said, you're creating chaos. And what you want to teach your managers to do is to really, and I tell them all the time, like, guys, I work for you more than you work for me. And what I really want you to do is to say, Evan, that's a great idea. It really, really is. But here are the 3 things that I've prioritized. All right, these are the 3 priorities. Now, if you want me to add that as another priority, something else is going to have to give, or it's going to have to wait. And by the way, that is a great look. You're not trying to ruin my energy, but at the same time, you're being realistic, right? You just can't do all things at the same time. And it's really about prioritization.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating, wouldn't it, if leaders actually almost assumed that everybody only had a capacity of 3 priorities, right? Rather than, just add this to your list, and it's now done.
Right. And by the way, it is frustrating, right? Because, you had this great idea, you had this epiphany, and, you want everyone motivated around it. But look, they have KPIs, and, I have a number of rules I live by. One of them is, never do anything you're not being measured against. Now, we always are doing things that we're not being measured against, but you're trying to avoid those. And so reality is, if you're talking to your head of product, your product person is supposed to get product out the door. They're supposed to have a level of bugs, or a level of some 5 nines, or whatever the functionality is. And so that is what you're measuring them on, not how many times they stopped what they were doing to answer your new idea, right? But there certainly is that balance there.
Yeah. Well, there's so many places to go there. I want to go back to temptation versus opportunity. How do you define the difference? What's the difference between those? How would you know which is which?
It's hard, right? So I would probably say look, it's very situational. Is it in your core competence? Would you be acquired because of that? Is that going to drive shareholder value? Right? Is that a core thing that someone is going to know, is going to say, gee, Richard's now doing this. That makes sense. That those to me are the opportunities. The temptations are things that, gee, they're sparkly and they smell really good and they look really shiny. Let's go do that. Now, by the way, sometimes temptations, sparkly things are good if you're looking at a short term, but acknowledge that. Hey, Richard, I want to go down a detour because I need to do something for March that's different than what I want to do in April. But I'm just acknowledging that this is a sparkly one-off. But that's it. I always look at, we get called and ideas for different things. And I'm like, we're recruiter.com. We have the benefit, Richard, of we know who our market is, right? Our market is, we're recruiter.com. We're a destination site for talent acquisition and all things recruiting, et cetera. So that's what we are. There are things that means that here's what we're not. We're not no recruiter. We're not do it without a recruiter. We are recruiter.com. So I think that you have to be true to yourself of what you are, and not be afraid to say, gee, that works and that doesn't work.
Hello, it's Richard here with a quick interlude. These conversations are all about upgrading how you think about creating impact. So here's a resource to help you do just that whilst staying fast and focused. The CEO's checklist for challenging times is a quick way to enhance your thinking and detect blind spots, even when things are moving incredibly fast and you're not sure what's going to happen next. You can get this powerful checklist of 17 world-class strategies by heading to xquadrant.com/go/challenging times checklist with a hyphen between each of those three last words. Now, back to the conversation. I love this idea of, I love your focus on KPIs and keeping focus, and the idea of like one thing per person is a strong one. My question is, how do you create collaboration and avoid silo mentality, right? You've got your executive team. If everybody's focused on their own piece of this interdependent feedback system that is a business, how do you get people pulling together?
I am incredibly transparent about our corporate objectives. So I sat down at the beginning of 21 and I said, look, by the end of the year, we're going to get to, around $3 million of monthly revenue per month. We're going to be up on NASDAQ with cash in the bank. And I want to have an understanding of what we need to do to hit profitability. Right. And that, and build a great company where people want to work, so get very good clarity on those things and make sure everyone understands how their piece fits into that. And so my priority is now, if we're talking about scalable revenue, all right, well, how does that translate across the rest of the company? Who's involved in scalable revenue? Well, scalable revenue means not just that you're signing customers, so that's sales, but also means that you're not churning customers, and that's on the customer success side. Margins and profitability are all about how good is your product, how much product, how many hands do you need to hold the product. Well, the fewer hands holding the product, the better your margins are going to be. So I think those things also relate to each other. I'm really just making sure everyone understands their role in the company. What are you doing that is making a difference to the company itself? What's your impact? What role are you playing in there? And what I like to, the other way I structure things is that the lower you get in the organization, the more clarity it should be, right? So, there's certain people you're going to go, look, they have one priority. You get to a certain level, all right, you're going to have two priorities, growth and churn, like maximizing new business and keeping the churn down, right? Because you're going to have two people that work for you, one who's focused on growth and one is going to focus on limiting churn. So I think as you get higher and higher up, you start to have those things. I balance four primary priorities, right? So even I do that. I'm the CEO. I'm entitled to actually balance those things, and then I get to decide what I'm working on. How does it fit into those things?
Yeah, I'm with you. I guess I'm curious because there's, for example, if in that case, the guy who's driving churn might driving growth. Might recruit a whole bunch of customers who are more likely to churn, right?
That's right.
Churn. And therefore, there's a natural tension in the system. If you over-index on anything, you're going to create unwanted side effects.
That's correct. And so if you have your head of revenue who's really hey, the fewer customers that churn, the easier it's going to be to grow your revenue. So the two are really the same, right?
Mm.
You don't want to be on a mouse wheel. You got to just keep replacing the mouse because you're burning out the mouse. And I think the other thing that I really think about is problem identification, problem solving alternatives, and problem resolution, right? And so you have people in your company that can't identify there's a problem, right? They have to be told that there's a problem. There are people that can identify a problem but can't identify possible solutions, and you have to help them navigate those solutions. You have people that could identify a problem, say, hey, look, I could either go choice A or B. What do you think? And then there are people who could foresee a problem coming, like, hey, I believe now that there's going to be a problem. One of the things I learned in Silicon Valley that lives with me, every day, is they have this expression: a trend starts with a single data point. Over here out on the East, a customer complains about something, and we'll say, all right, let's see if it happens again. Maybe it was a one-off. Let's wait. Let's see what happens. On the West Coast, and certainly in Silicon Valley, it's, if one company complained, you should assume that 10,000 companies are going to complain.
Yeah.
And so it really lets you, going back to what you said before about the hockey puck, it really lets you identify, gee, is this a trend? And you really get to identify that incredibly early if you assume that everything that happens is a potential trend.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, a data point can be a trend, and often it is, because you're getting one instance and you haven't seen all the other instances.
That's right. That's right. And you have to say to yourself, gee, bring it back to recruiter.com. We got called by a law firm, small boutique law firm, probably 30 people in the company. They're like, hey, we can't hire paralegals. And you're like, what? You put an ad out and you get paralegals. Yeah. They're like, yeah, we got 1,000 of them through LinkedIn, but none of them were paralegals. People are just applying the jobs, because it's easy to apply. Yeah. And I'm pulling my hair out. What can I do? And we came up with this My Recruiter product, which really is a subscription service specifically for SMBs, so small companies. You get a talent advisor who works with you on what your hiring requirements are. They have full access to our AI software, everything like that. But that all started with a single data point. Gee, this happened once. Let's see if we can actually replicate it.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. So I want to just turn over the side of the coin.
How do you like that, Rich? I got to plug my company.
It's okay. Well, for anyone who's I'd be surprised if we didn't talk about it at some point in this conversation, Evan. So that's good. I want to ask about the dark side, right? What's the dark side of your strengths, right? Being this very numbers driven, focused, focusing on what's next, getting people laser focused, or all these things. What have been areas where you've
what do I suck at?
Well, what have you sucked at, perhaps? Yeah. Or
what do I suck at?
Yeah. So how does that play out, right? Yeah.
So my weakness is there are a few things. One is I'm a very, very, very high energy, passionate individual.
Oh, come on! That sounds like something that your candidates are putting on their CVs. My weakness is I try too hard.
No. Yeah, that's try too hard. No. And so when someone when someone wants to slow me up, my initial reaction is to get very, very angry. That's my initial reaction, is to get very, very upset. Why are you trying to slow this up? I'm bearing down the highway and you're putting up, speed bumps. Stop putting up speed bumps. Stop being a naysayer. Come along for the ride, etc. So that's a little bit more on an emotional side. But actually, I'm really not good at I don't like legal agreements. I don't like really detailed paperwork. It's the ADHD in me, that kicks in there. So, and again, it's also a sales thing. When I go in there and if I pitched you on something and you're bought, you're done, I'm finished. I want to go on to the next one. I don't want to be now working through agreements and let's go on the red line. That just pulls my hair out. And I really follow the methodology, even inside the organization, is you focus on people's strengths, not on their weaknesses. Right. So if Richard's great at these 5 things and you're not as great on these 2 things, why would I want you to improve those 2 other things? Let's just focus on the things you're great at and find other people to do the rest. Yeah. And so that's kind of my MO.
Yeah. That's Yeah, it's interesting. There's the strengths-based leadership thing. I mean, I think it is really important. I tend to say to people though, it's like you need to be careful about the saboteurs, right? The things which trip you up, which undermine your influence. And so I don't say if you put a bit of effort on those just to make sure that they're not going to undermine all the good stuff, then you're free to kind of let rip
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
strengths.
that's right. It's I've been involved in a number of nonprofits. I ran my kids' school for a while. I was the president there. And I would always tell my kids, there are two types of people that are on boards. Those who want to move things forward and those who want to stop things from moving at all, right? And they're just very, very binary. And I'm a very binary individual, helping or hindering, and et cetera. So you look at those things, and it's like, getting people along the way and getting buy-in. And I should probably do a better job getting buy-in along the way. It'll probably serve the purpose better. So good lesson to self. So starting March 22, Evan will start doing a better job getting buy-in. So thanks, Richard. Learned a lot. Coming away with something good.
Well, actually, when you talked about getting angry when people try to slow you down, it reminded me of a story. One of my clients has it's a very large business in many countries, and he was leading a transformation initiative, right, as CEO. And he came to me on one of our coaching sessions, and he said, Richard, so and so on my team, he's not with the program. Everyone else is okay, is like with it, and this one person, they like just being negative, coming up with these reasons it's not going to work. They're not really engaged. And we kind of talked about it, and the conclusion actually was, what? Just made me realize he's actually the most engaged member of my executive team. Everybody else is easy to go, yes, boss.
Yeah, right.
But this guy, he's actually got the challenge, the courage to like actually come up to me and tell me and actually put issues on the table. And so he went back and talked to this guy, and he realized, oh yeah, actually he does want this thing to succeed. He just does see a whole bunch of issues, right, that he feels could come up and bite us and cause it not to work. And so he suddenly realized that this person he saw was a naysayer, like actually was a strength, because it was like, well, he's actually motivated to make it work, and actually we can iron through some of the issues with my brilliant plan. Perhaps there's an area that's not so brilliant. And I thought it was a fantastic turnaround to reposition this person he thought was almost like it's got to leave. He suddenly embraced him and has been really getting value from that interaction.
Yeah, we have 3 primary culture sort of initiatives: be human, be bold, and be an owner. So take ownership of your situation, problem solve, own the situation, own the problem. Be bold, take more shots on goal, try things. But also stand up to when you're not seeing that things are the right way, right? That's being bold. Tell Evan that, hey, you're wrong, Evan, that's fine. Or, hey, Evan, you shouldn't have said it that way. And you don't appreciate that there are certain ways to your tone, et cetera. And then be human, right? We're all about people. We're in the people business. And so there is at the end of the day here, our fundamental belief is recruiting and talent acquisition is always about people, right? No one comes to work for Richard without actually speaking to Richard. Bots, AI, all that other jazz, you're not going to work at a company from the dishwasher to the chief product officer without actually speaking to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So perfect. Well, let's move on. Just for the sake of time, I want to hit you with a few quick fire questions, which I'm sure you'll be good at, given your quick fire way of working. So first one is a favorite quote. What's a quote that's really influenced you, or is something that you live by?
Quote that I live by. I have so many. So that's the problem.
Or leadership mantra or something like that.
Yeah, I was quoting an old CEO of mine, Ron Brown, who said, the hardest thing is to know the difference between temptation and opportunity. I think that's a great quote. But I actually do a theme every week at our company All Hands, and there's a quote every single week.
Okay.
So there's always I'm inundated with great quotes. And so I will go with the Steve Jobs quote, right? Dumb people hire smart people and tell them what to do. The smart people hire smart people and listen to them. So that's just a paraphrasing. And I think that's really what you got to do. Make sure you're surrounded by just really smart people. align everyone on objectives and let them run.
Perfect. What's your favorite app on your phone?
So I would say I'm a Slack. I'm a big Slack user. I can't start the day without Wordly, but I would say Slack. After email and text and sort of your basic applications, I'm a real Slack user, so I'll check out Slack a lot.
Okay, great. What about a book? What is a book that has influenced your leadership?
Yeah, I would say Extreme Ownership. So that's a very cool book. Extreme Ownership's a really good book. The Lighthouse Effect is a book written by one of our board members, Stephen Pemberton. Great book. Phenomenal story, individual, but also great book. And I'm old school, so I've done like all of the Tom Peters, all the old guys. If you look at my shelf, it's like packed with with business books, etc. That are also pretty exciting.
Perfect. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self if you could go back in time?
Yeah, great. I would say no matter what you're doing, make sure you surround yourself with really good partners. And I mean that, like, you got to have really good partners. If you're going to have KPIs and you're going to have objectives, sharing those objectives with people who are totally aligned to your shared goals. And that only comes from a partner, right? It's not employees, right? Employees, they have their own self and whatever that is, et cetera. But in life, you need to have a partner that's totally aligned with the way, you want to, with yourself. And in business, you have to have a partner and make sure that whatever you're doing, you have an absolute partner to balance off you, fight with, challenge without any ulterior motive. So to me, that really is what a partner. There's no ulterior motive other than the benefit of the partnership.
Yeah, perfect. The next question, our final quick fire question really is actually around who inspires you, right? Many of our best guests on the show come from referrals, right? CEOs who inspire other CEOs. So I'm always curious, is there an inspiring, impactful CEO, that you personally know, you've worked with or you've encountered, who inspires you, who might be a great guest for the show?
Great. I take in my personality from multiple CEOs and people that I've worked with. So there's the singularly focused, driven individual, which was a Silicon Valley salesperson, probably one of the best biz dev people I've ever met with in my life. If I'm an elephant hunter, he's a dragon slayer. If I'm a dragon slayer, he's a world conqueror. But then I've met great CEOs who are incredible storytellers. They just build this incredible story. No matter the world is falling apart, and they'll go, look, isn't it amazing how the world is really able to now be rebuilt, and like just incredible, just absolutely amazing storytellers. And I've just watched these individuals who know all their numbers, and there's the operational folks, et cetera, who just know everything that's going on in the business. And it's really great to watch each of them succeed in their own way and learn from them, what it takes to actually move things to the next level for yourself. And you're going to have to embody, those elements and those characteristics into your own persona.
Yeah, absolutely. So my final question is really around your next level, because one of my mantras is, no matter how much we've achieved, there's always a next level to get to if we can reinvent our own success formula. So first of all, where does recruiter.com go from here as a business? What's next for the business?
So the fun part of recruiter.com is we are a public company. So we have a business and then the business of the business, right? So as opposed to, every company sort of has both sides. There's the operational side of things, and then there's the business of the business. When you're a public company, it's a little bit more pronounced.
Yeah.
So we're continuing to grow. We did 2 million in 2019. We did 8 million in 2020. We'll do over 18, 20 million or so in 21, and we're going to double that in 22. So we're really just growing very nicely. Very pleased with how we're growing. Just want to continue to really expand on our business, make a lot of money for recruiters. Do a great job with our clients, add more clients. We're over 300 plus clients now, just adding more and more and more every single month. and continuing to deliver on our mission of recruiting talent faster and better. We've got some great software. So, as our software gets better, it'll get easier. I think our My Recruiter product is really the cat's meow. So I think that's going to be exciting, and watching that really unfold. So I think we're really at the golden age of talent acquisition. And, 3 years from now, every company of size, 25 plus people are going to be spending money on an individual who's helping them manage their overall talent acquisition and retention. Very much the same way, Richard, that every company now is spending money on security. Yeah. We take that for granted, but we didn't talk about security in the 90s. Absolutely. No one did. Security meant the guy at the front gate who let you in with your badge. And Michelangelo came around, which was an antivirus, which was a big virus. And now everyone has antivirus, anti-spam, and network protection and network intrusion. And we have the big companies that have a chief security officer, et cetera. And I think that every company is going to have someone focused on, talent acquisition and retention. And we're going to be one of those companies to really benefit from that space.
Perfect. And how about you, Evan? How are you going to need to do things differently to multiply your own impact?
It's a great question. The reality is that we have multiple facets of the company, and really just making sure that we have great team members and continue to hire great people to really run those areas of the business. We have a great software product. We have a great on-demand product. We have all these things that get tied together, and really ensuring that we, continue to be very transparent to our own company, to our shareholders, and where we're headed to. And really continue that overall growth itself. I have my own demons I have to, improve along the way, but really continuing to surround myself with just great people as we, look to really build the company that we all know we could be. I run around here with the thought, Richard, that, Recruiter.com is $1 billion company. We're just not there yet, right? We really have the opportunity to be $1 billion company. And my job is to help shepherd the company to get there. That's it. Yeah. Nice and simple.
Perfect. Well, I was going to say, where do people get in touch? But I think in terms of getting in touch with Recruiter.com, I guess you go to Recruiter.com.
Yes, you go to Recruiter.com. It's Evan, EVAN, at Recruiter.com. I welcome the opportunity to talk to anyone in your audience. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I got a nice profile there too. You can reach out to me on Twitter, Evan Sohn. You can email me at evan@recruiter.com. And if you're interested, you can go to recruiter.com. We've got plenty of information there, to look at.
Evan, hey, it's been fantastic. Thanks a lot for this tour de force as we've explored so many, fascinating topics at a pretty high speed, right? We've covered a lot. We've covered, being bold, being human, being an owner. A data point is a trend. We've covered this whole question of temptation versus opportunity, really figuring out what's next and getting good on that. And we've covered the whole story of Recruiter.com, in the process. So I think we've covered a lot of ground. It's been really rich conversations. Just thank you for taking the time.
Richard, thank you for having me on your show, and looking forward to doing this again.
Yeah, many thanks. Take care, Evan. Bye-bye now. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at Xquadrant.com.